conference. Just before the break, a question that came up was this planned? Did the speakers kind of get together and figure this all out? No. But there is a theme that runs throughout this event, and we can't escape it. And it's important that we do recognize the fact that we are living in very challenging times. We need to understand the times we're living in, and that deception is all around us. It's within our churches. It's within our community. And if anything, when you leave this place, I hope that you will be better equipped to recognize it, to deal with it, and to see the seriousness of the issues. Well, the second topic for this weekend is entitled Techno-Gods, Engineering the Evolving Man. Now, if you were here yesterday, you took a look at technocracy together with myself. You took a look at Babylon, the works of our hands, and today we're going to be spinning off into a more technical and yet very relevant topic, transhumanism. If you have a chance, go to our book table. We've got little postcards with our website on. I edit a publication that comes out every month that deals on global issues, how politics, economics, religion, social issues blend and challenge us and our faith, and how we can recognize just which way the wolves are running and how things are moving. So take a look at the website. We have some free articles as well, and definitely avail yourselves to the conference special with that in mind. Techno-Gods, Engineering the Evolving Man. Many of you might recognize the famous painting in the Sistine Chapel of God reaching out and touching the hand of man. And the hand of man here is in the construction of a robot. This is our doing, our technology. This is what we can do, what we can achieve. Well, this is a very provocative title, Techno-Gods. What does it mean? When we're done, you're going to see that this is a new idea, but it's not really, because there's nothing new under the sun. It may be new to you, but the idea behind it has been around since the very beginning of our fall. Here's a quote I like to open up with. As our understanding of technology grows, so does our understanding of the spiritual universe. Our conception of God has formed and reformed into the shape of our technology. Not only that, spiritual figures are seen as a master of current and future technology. Profound technological change and profound philosophical change are intermingled. This is accurate for the day and age we are living in. We are now looking at God and saying it is through the works of our hands. And our spirituality is tied in with our technology. Our spirituality is now tied in with how we are evolving. And as we go through this presentation, you'll understand why I'm saying it in this sense. Well, open up your Bibles. We've got to go right to the beginning. We have to take a look at the foundation. Genesis chapter 1. Genesis chapter 1, and we'll be reading verses 20 to verse 31. Then God said, "Let the waters abound with an abundance of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth, across the face of the firmament of the heavens." So God created great sea creatures and every living thing that moves, with which the waters abounded, according to their kind, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let birds multiply on the earth." So the evening and the morning were the fifth day. Then God said, "Let the earth bring forth the living creature according to its kind, cattle and creeping things and beasts of the earth, each according to its kind." And it was so. And God made the beasts of the earth according to its kind, cattle according to its kind, and everything that creeps on the earth according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female, he created them. Then God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. And God said, see, I have given you every herb that yields seed, which is on the face of all the earth, and every tree whose fruit yields seed. To you it shall be for food. Also to every beast of the earth, to every bird of the air, and to everything that creeps on the earth, in which there is life, I have given every green herb for food. And it was so. Then God saw everything that he had made, and indeed it was very good. So the evening and the morning were the sixth day. It's interesting. Do you see a repetition? It was good, and God made it after their own kind. The fish, he created after their own kind. The cattle after its own kind. The creeping thing after its own kind. We are seeing here, you could say, a biological framework. This is God's created order. This is God's natural order that he established with parameters, with bounds. It didn't say the fish became a cow or the cow became something else. It wasn't an evolutionary process. It was defined. It was put in its order, in its place. And then he made us a little extra special. He set us above it. He took man and breathed the breath of life into him. And we are outside of creation, and yet we are still part of creation. It's a very interesting dynamic that's taking place. But this is important to realize because as we'll be going into this presentation this afternoon, you're going to realize that everything I'll be saying, everything I'll be presenting to you is diametrically opposed to what Genesis 1 says. Absolutely opposed to it. This is fable, according to our modern mindset. This is nothing but myth. It was very good became it wasn't quite right. It wasn't quite good enough. It wasn't perfect. Here we see Lucifer enticing Adam and Eve with something, with knowledge, so that they too could become as God and that they would never die. From being very good, created after its own kind, to now questioning. Now the serpent was more cunning than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. And he said to the woman, has God indeed said, you shall not eat of every tree of the garden? And the woman said to the serpent, we may eat the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God has said, you shall not eat of it, nor shall you touch it, lest you die. Then the serpent said to the woman, you will not surely die, for God knows that in the day you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, you will be like God, knowing good and evil. So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree desirable to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate. She also gave to her husband with her, and he ate. There is a Luciferic paradigm, a Luciferic principle that is at work in this passage. There's a focus on God and putting doubt into the mind of Adam and Eve. Did God really say? Did he really say that? Did you hear it right? Is his word trustworthy? And then there's the alternative. You'll surely not die. You will live. Immortality is there. You will not die. And then the offer of self-deification through a special spiritual knowledge. You will be as God, knowing good and evil. This is the first Gnostic lie. Through special knowledge, you can ascend. Through special knowledge, you can become perfect. Because obviously, you're not perfect if you're looking to improve yourself with the fruit, which is also part of this lie that we're seeing here in Genesis. The implications are enormous. God is keeping you from your full potential. He wants to keep you in the dark. Perfection comes through Lucifer. Wholeness comes through the Luciferic paradigm. The occult version of Genesis chapter 3 is this. Yahweh, God, is jealous and vindictive and wants to keep you chained in ignorance and darkness. Lucifer provides enlightenment. Lucifer provides alternatives. Lucifer provides options and gives you intellect, potential, advancement, choice, progress. That's the occult way of looking at this particular passage. This is why you see Lucifer as the light bearer, as the one who's giving knowledge, giving wisdom, giving intellect, all throughout occult literature. Here's a few examples. Lucifer, light bearer, from the Theosophical Publishing, from the Theosophical Society. The Kabbalah, the science of light. It's all about gnosis, light, knowledge. You will improve. You will become perfected through knowledge. Well, I've got to take you back a little ways to when I was 16 years old. I was at a youth retreat, a summer youth retreat, at Lake Medegoshi. Am I saying that right? Medegoshi. Us Manitobans always screw that one up for some reason. I'm not quite sure why. In any case, it was a great warm summer day. We had arrived at the campsite. All of us guys hopped in canoes, went paddling across the lake to what looked like a really interesting island, about 1,500 yards into the water. And you see here, right where it is, most of you know where the location is, right on the Manitoba-North Dakota border. We're neighbors. And as we canoe to the west side of the island, there are 2 blue pillars and a series of 3, 5, and 7 steps, all with symbols etched into the cement. And so we're very curious, what is this? And so us young guys, we dock up and we walk into the middle of the island, and there is an outdoor structure of some kind with podiums and chairs and lecterns and different things. What is this? What is this? Now, I come from a town called Gladstone, Manitoba. And in Gladstone, we always had this building with a letter G and a square and a compass. And I was young, I was naive. I always thought that stood for, of course, Gladstone. So I'm looking here at this island and I'm going, what's Gladstone doing here? It was at that point I realized, okay, Carl, the world isn't quite as it seems. What is this all about? Later on that weekend, some of us young guys were able to take a ride with a park ranger in the boat, and we asked him, what in the world is all this about? So he explained to us, well, that's Mason's Island. And if you want to progress in life, you need to join the Masonic Lodge. That is how you'll get ahead. So the next day, all the canoes were gone, and me and another buddy by the name of Raymond, we got a hold of 2 air mattresses. And it was a blistering warm day, and we were young and foolish and wore no suntan lotion. And by the time we dog paddled across the 1,500 yards and had our air mattress completely flattened, we were baked to a crisp. And we explored the island thoroughly. This is interesting stuff. What's this all about? So already back then, there was already little cues going, okay, there's something going on here, Carl. There's something happening. Later on in life, I ended up working for a group of senior citizens for a senior resource program, a part of our Manitoba Health program in my hometown. Almost all of my board members were members of the Masonic Lodge or the Eastern Star or some affiliated organization. And there was lots of pressure to join the lodge. And I never did. But 2 of my board members pulled me aside for a supper meeting and grilled me for about an hour. Why don't you join the lodge? How come you're not joining us? Lots of pressure. And I'm like, well, what are you all about? Are you about politics? No, we're not about politics. Are you about religion? No, we're not about religion. Okay, well, what are you about? We're about making good men better. Whip-de-doo. I mean, no thank you. I'd rather go dirt biking. I'm a farm boy. I'd rather go hunting. I'd rather do anything else instead of being in a room full of stuffy old guys trying to be made better. And so finally, one of the gentlemen, I think more or less to appease maybe thoughts I never even had, said to me, Carl, we're not Satanists. Where did that come from? I had never even associated the 2 together. What are you talking about? At that point I realized, Mr. Teichrib, you need to find out what in the world these guys have been accused of. What's going on? So I spent a ton of time, years actually, of research and sleuthing around to try to find out what's going on. What is this all about? I realized they're not Satanists. They're not. Luciferians. And there's a difference. Within the occult perspective, the Luciferic paradigm, there's a difference. Albert Pike, one of the leading philosophers of Freemasonry, says this, Lucifer, the light bearer, and by the way, none of this is placed as, how do I say this? All of this is in the original. There's nothing here to emphasize something. That's in the original, the capitals, the italics. Lucifer, the light bearer, strange and mysterious name to give to the spirit of darkness. Lucifer, the son of the morning, is it he who bears the light? Doubt it not. Manly P. Hall. When the Mason learns that the key to the warrior on the block, in other words, you want to be the tough guy, the big guy, when the Mason learns that the key to the warrior on the block is the proper application of the dynamo of living power, he has learned the mystery of his craft. The seething energies of Lucifer are in his hands. Wow. Okay. Probably 75% of the men in the lodge haven't a clue what they're actually involved in. And I don't think that probably any more than one or two people in my own community had any concept that this was part of their structure. But the more digging I did, the more I realized that there's some really twisted things going on within the lodge. Some very strange teachings. Here's one of them. Perfectibility. And you're going to see how all this ties together. Albert Pike. Step by step. Keep that in mind. Step by step. Degree by degree. Step by step, men must advance toward perfection. And each Masonic degree is meant to be one of those steps. There's a longer one, but you need to take notice of it. From grade to grade, or step by step, degree by degree, the candidate is being led from an old to an entirely new quality of life. He begins his Masonic career as the natural man. He ends it by becoming, through its discipline, a regenerated, perfected man. This, the evolution of man into Superman, was always the purpose of the ancient mysteries, and the real purpose of modern Masonry is not the social and charitable purpose to which so much attention is paid, but the expediting of the spiritual evolution of those who aspire to perfect their own nature and transform it into a more God-like quality. And this is a definite science, a royal art. This is about spiritual evolution, but Henry Clausen, who was the leading Mason in America in the southern jurisdiction during the 70s and I believe part of the early 80s, he makes it very clear that this dovetails with science as well. Science and religion will be welded into a unified exponent of an overriding spiritual power. The theme, in essence, is that the revelations of Eastern mysticism and the discoveries of modern science support the Masonic and Scottish Rite beliefs and teachings. Science and philosophy, especially when linked through mysticism, have yet to conquer ignorance. Victory, however, appears on the horizon. Laboratory and library, science and philosophy, outstanding technicians and theologians are now uniting as advocates of man's unique quality, his immortal soul and expanding soul. And you thought it was just about, breakfasts and fundraisers and burn units and wonderful good things they do in the community. No doubt they do good things in the community. That's not in question. But there's something going on. This is far more than just making good men better. Unless, of course, your notion of making a good man better is something different than what I'm thinking. Theosophy teaches very similar concepts. Most people here have probably never heard of or studied theosophy, but theosophy is the birthplace of the modern New Age movement. Madame Blavatsky founded it in the 1880s, and the concept behind it is simply that it is a science of religion, that all faiths form a universal creed. All religions, all spiritual traditions are part of one and the same universal ethic, universal overriding principle. And through this, you can become perfected. You can become as God. It is the new Gnosticism. And through theosophy, you are taught that evolution is part of the process. Evolution will lead you up into this expanding, overriding soul. You can become, if you are good enough, if you are knowledgeable enough, if you have deepened your character into the Luciferic paradigm deep enough, you can become an ascended master, a perfected man, a holy, evolved man. You can become as God. This is the same teaching that Barbara Marx Hubbard deals with when she talks about conscious evolution, synergistic democracy, spiritual evolution. These are the terms that she throws around. Great shift. She co-founded the World Future Society, which is a world government advocate, lobby kind of organization that dabbles with the idea of global governance and also with spiritual evolution. It kind of bridges the two together. It's all about emergence. This is the New Age occult philosophy. You are ascending. You are emerging. You are integrating. Every aspect of your existence is part of this evolving framework, this evolving paradigm. Well, Ken Wilber teaches the same thing. Who here has heard of Ken Wilber? One hand. Maybe one other. That's it? Two. Who here has read Brian McLaren? Quite a few hands. Well, then you've read Ken Wilber. In essence, that's what you've done. Brian McLaren makes it very clear on at least two written occasions that his idea of emergence and Ken Wilber's idea of integration is essentially the same. There's really no difference. Ken Wilber is a Christian / Buddhist / New Age / mystic / whatever, who teaches the idea of great mind, big history, evolved spirituality. You are all part of the big mind. You are all I ams. And this is what he teaches. You are all evolving into the I am. Before you were born, what were you? You were the I am. 5 minutes ago, what were you? The I am. 5 centuries ago, what were you? Because you existed back then in big history. Well, you were the I am. Everything is integrated. Everything is connected. Everything is mystical. Everything is mystery. If you've read Brian McLaren, then you've read Ken Wilber. Actually, there's a lot of people in the emergent movement who take the ideas of Ken Wilber and integrate it into their own process. By the way, if you've ever done any study at all on the history of psychedelia with the Esalen Institute and the whole Timothy Leary LSD phenomena, Ken Wilber comes up because he was very involved and still is involved in rubbing shoulders with some of these same people, some of these same concepts. Because if we can experience this through drugs and through alternate forms of consciousness, we can also do this through mysticism. It's one and the same. We're looking for the same breakthrough, the same idea of becoming integrated into the whole. And so now we're seeing evolutionary Christianity. Has anybody here listened to any of the teleseries that was broadcast from December the 9th to January 14th of this year? Any hands? None. Okay, wow. Did you know about this? There's a teleseries that went on where approximately, I think it was 38 major Christian teachers or those involved in Christendom, including Catholic mystics, including emergent leaders, including Protestant leaders, who discussed the way that evolution is now playing into their faith and how they have more or less shucked the old myths and the old traditions and have now re-embraced evolution and see it as the key to their own spiritual advancement. It's very interesting stuff. It's all about evolutionary spirituality and evolutionary experiences. Because the experiences that you're going through are part of that step-by-step process to move you from one stage to another. That is the point of mystical experiences. It is the process of perfection. This is evolution, not just in a biological sense, but as a paradigm shift. Evolution here deals on biology, but it deals in so much more. It deals in every aspect of your life, every aspect of culture and society. This is a new evolutionary thought form, where the science of it, if there's inconsistencies, well, we're not going to deal with that because we see how this now is leading us into a holistic, integrated, unified oneness. We are all moving in this global shift, this emergence. And so now religion is becoming a part of the evolutionary process. Art, literature, your social networks, all that is being configured and thought of as a part of the evolutionary framework. We're going way beyond biology, far beyond it. But of course, that's where it stemmed from. The Darwinian principle of evolutionary biology. But the pull behind Darwin's theory of evolution has always been greater than just biology. Social Darwinism exemplified this in a major way. It's the idea that humanity can breed the perfect man. Science, technology, the works of our hands can assist in the selection process. Now, of course, we have pictures here of Francis Galton, the father of social Darwinism and eugenics, and Charles Darwin. we can take a look at this movement, the idea of eugenics and social Darwinism, and we see that the real heyday of it was from 1900 to 1945. By the way, we're back into it now, but we have new terminology with it, such as transhumanism, posthumanism, neo-humanism, humanity plus. And so we see some very interesting history with the eugenics movement, with social Darwinism. In 1907, Indiana became the very first state of 30 to legalize compulsory sterilization and for certain types of individuals, especially those who were considered feeble-minded. It was all about racial hygiene. Many other countries followed suit, including my own. Nazi Germany took this to its logical conclusion with racial laws, the elimination of feeble-minded Germans. First and foremost, it wasn't the elimination of Jews, it was elimination of their own Germanic people. It was the elimination of those Germans who were mentally handicapped, those who had diseases that were thought of as tainting the bloodline. Those are the first ones on the butcher's block. And then later, the Jews, the Slavs, the Gypsies. This is the concept of Nietzsche's Overman, Superman. Ethics and values are all built upon humanistic lines. You will evolve through a higher form of biological advancement via scientific and technological achievements. It's all about breeding the new you. And it was adopted, of course, by Nazis as, you could say, their model or their motto of Aryan perfection. This is the Overman, the Superman, the Übermensch. I don't know if I said that quite right, but you get the idea. And this is part of the idea of biological improvement. You are going to become perfected through breeding. Technocracy teaches something very similar. We dealt yesterday quite a bit with technocracy. Here, technocracy is the religion of humanity through technique, through science, through the works of your hands, through engineering, through expertise. This is where man directs social evolution, where experts guide us, where experts move us into perfectibility. Harold Loeb, in his book Life in a Technocracy, wrote this in 1933. Technocracy envisions another form of domestication, a form in which man may become more than man, through breeding with specific individuals for specific purposes. A technocracy, then, should in time produce a race of men superior in quality to any now known on earth. Wow. So what happens when you take and throw all this in a pot and you mix it all together? What happens when you throw in mysticism and the idea of a spiritual perfection? When you throw in scientific perfection, Darwinistic, social Darwinistic perfection, technocracy? Out the other end comes transhumanism, which, if you haven't heard of it before this week, you will hear about it in the future, because there's huge dollars attached to this. This is all about moving us into a new life form. This is all about perfecting mankind, because something was wrong, and we took a bite of the apple, we took a bite of the fruit, and we sought perfection through another master. What is this all about? This is about becoming more than man. This is becoming post-human. Here's a few key points. We had mentioned this yesterday, but we need to reiterate. It's premised on the belief that evolution is true. Because you are conscious, you can then consciously choose to direct evolution. You can shape it. Our technology will play a leading part in that. We will reshape not just you, but all of society to fit the new post-human world. Man plays God, man becomes God, and technology will be the way it is expressed. Well, here's a few examples, and we're going to go through some of the more technical sides of this, but you'll definitely get the point. It's the idea that we can merge our consciousness. Here's one aspect of it. We can merge our consciousness through virtual reality and integrate our brain with computer programming, and then we can literally look to uplink and download via the web. We can be part of the great global network. Advanced artificial intelligence, robotics plays a role. DNA splicing and modification. You might look at this and go, Carl, this is pretty whacked out stuff. You need to start reading medical journals. You need to start reading some of the more technical journals, and you realize, wow, this is what's being talked about, has been talked about for a long time. This is the way the world is running. You may think, Oh, this is kind of weird, this is kind of nutso stuff. No, sorry. The scientific world is saying, this is what we need to embrace. This is where we're taking you. And so here's just one example of it, mind-machine interfacing. We already have gone beyond the theoretical stage. You can now buy special headgear with sensors that will read your brain functions and then be able to convert that from your mind into your computer screen. If you go on Second Life, and I go on Second Life a little bit, a virtual environment where you move around in 3 dimensions, interact, just like this right now. If I want to spend the money on it, I can buy a nice little headset and I can just use my mind to move around in this 3-dimensional virtual digital environment. What does this mean? Now the question is, what is consciousness? What does it mean even to be human? Can we upload and download memories? It sounds pretty far out. Yeah, it does. But this is what the computer industry is now talking about. This is the direction we're looking at going. Brain-computer interfacing. Here's a quote. When asked what the largest or the most important technological advancement will be in the next 20 years, this was one of the suggestions. And this comes from the Institute for Ethics and Emerging Technologies. Interface technologies that bridge the gap between the human brain and the internet. In 20 years, our interaction with the web will be so seamless that it will be considered an axiomatic organ. Implications include ubiquitous access to all knowledge stores on the net and telepathy. You will use your mind to move in this digital environment. Freaky stuff. Really bizarre stuff. And yet, we're already a long ways into the process of making that a reality. We're now talking about, in scientific circles, the idea of creating a global hive mind. And you'll hear this as chaos theory. It's a concept that because everybody will be interconnected, it'll form a form of global consensus building. That will be the new type of democracy, the new global framework for democracy. It is going to be consensus based on every one of our collected, individualized decisions mashed into a whole, and we come up with a product. You buy books on Amazon. Amazon then says, others who have bought this book also recommend that you buy this book and this book. Already you see the formation of this, the idea that based on everybody else's collective decisions, now we have examples for you to follow. Here's a product for you to buy. This is the way the hive is moving. Social networking does this beautifully. This is all part of the hive mentality. You are interrelated, interlocked, and your decisions now play off of each other's decisions. We were just talking about it yesterday with an individual who made a very interesting comment that if you place on Facebook something that says, a nice, happy, feel-good kind of statement, everybody goes thumbs up. But if you offer a critical expose, all of a sudden it's thumbs down. You don't do it. Now your behavior changes. You don't do it because the hive already is punishing you for messing up their good feelings. Serious stuff, ladies and gentlemen. Artificial intelligence, robotics also plays into this. Quantum computing. This is where we're moving into. We're moving into computations at a level that we have never before considered. We are going to shape and change society based on our technology. We will do wonderful things. We will do horrible things. We will do things because we can. It's almost as if it can be done, we're just going to push forward and we're going to do it. Why? Because we can. John Glad, a part of the new eugenics movement, says this: carbon-based technology, that's you, by the way. Also, you're a bioconservative if you don't go along with this. That's the language that's being used. You're a biofundamentalist. Carbon-based technology has its limitations. The individual human brain is limited by its size, by the amount of time available for learning, and by the speed at which it can process information. A computer can be created of any size with limitless memory and limitless programming. The machine brain will be something like God. This will make the decisions for you. Because God knows best. And God is your collective hive consciousness. That's the thinking behind this. Well, cloning. DNA splicing. Is this fantasy? Is this science fiction? My goodness, no. We have been playing around in this industry for a long, long time. Already a number of years ago, Time magazine had this front cover, human cloning. The hand of God touching the hand of man, touching the hand of man, touching the hand of man. Because it was a hand of man who was God in this type of a framework. Now we create glow-in-the-dark transgenic pigs. We can create goats whose milk has been fortified through DNA from spiders. Just amazing, bizarre stuff. What's the limitation? What's the end of it? Well, Genesis chapter 1 gives us very definable, discernible, biological guidelines. And if you read it again, and I would really encourage you to read Genesis 1 again, notice how over and over again it says, after their own kind, after their own kind. This is a very definitive biological statement. This is not confusion. This is not mixing it all up. This is very defined. There is order. There is semblance. There is sequence. It is perfect in his eye. It is good. Jeremy Rifkin, very influential individual, already wrote this in 1998. For the first time in history, we become the engineers of life itself. We begin to reprogram the genetic codes of living things to suit our own cultural and economic needs and desires. We take on the task of creating a second Genesis, this time a synthetic one geared to the requisites of efficiency and productivity. We do. I come from a farming background. When we put canola in the ground, it's no longer canola in its pure form. It has been genetically modified. It's canola plus. And we did it for economic benefit because it's good. It's a good product. It does all kinds of great things that the advertisers tell you it does. And you don't have to use so much chemical and all kinds of great, great things. We've been doing this for a long, long time. Now we're just talking about doing this at the human level. Come on, get with it. Don't you want to improve? I mean, I got a bum knee. My throat's kind of sore right now. I'm sure you have ailments. You all want to upgrade, right? You're just a machine. You're just evolving. Maybe we can incorporate some animal DNA. You want night vision? I'm sure we could figure out a way. This is what Jeremy Rifkin says. Transgenic animals are a radical departure from both evolutionary history and classical breeding practices. Never before in history have scientists had the tools to bypass species boundaries altogether and create novel creatures by combining genetic information from across the expanse of the biological kingdom. We're going to create a jigsaw puzzle of DNA, and poof, out at the other end will come a new creature. We are playing God. Former chairperson of the President's Council of Bioethics said this: all of the boundaries are up for grabs. Let me repeat that in case you didn't get the importance of it. All of the boundaries are up for grabs. All of the boundaries that have defined us as human beings, boundaries between a human being and an animal, and between a human being and a superhuman being or a god. We are rebuilding the Tower of Babel genetically. We are doing it digitally. We're doing it politically. We're evolving into something more. We're going to become Superman. Interestingly, this is what the space alien brothers tell us. They tell us that they're here and they're coming down to integrate DNA with ours. Kind of bizarre. You might say, well, this is really whacked stuff, Carl. This is what culture is gravitating towards. You may not believe it. I may not believe it. It doesn't really matter if you actually believe it or not. Culture is accepting it. Culture is saying this is the road we want to travel. What's the hottest selling literary genre right now for the teenage market? Paranormal romance. The girl falls in love with the demonically engineered vampire Superman, or whatever it may be. We're culturally set up like this already. It's strange how we're already going down these roads socially. John Glad said this: we need to be open. Remember, he's part of the new eugenics movement. He's very involved in the scientific community. We need to be open to genetic manipulation. machine enhancement, and even contact with beings from other planets. What are we opening up ourselves to? It's interesting how they, the aliens, are coming to help us. They're coming to save us from ourselves. And they'll do it with genetics, or they'll do it with whatever. I find it interesting how they come light years and light years and light years away to help us perfect ourselves in the Luciferic conception of this. And when you actually read their channeled writings, what do? They tell you all about what type of a political situation you need to have on Earth. You need a global government. They tell you what type of economic system you need. You need global socialism or communism. It's amazing. You flew billions of light years away to come and tell me, or to teach me Karl Marx and Barbara Marx Hubbard. I could have just traveled to Barnes & Nobles and got the books myself. Thank you very much. You wasted a lot of time and effort. What does that tell you about the power behind this? There's a principality and a power here that is based in the teachings of the demonic. It is the teachings of fallen angels. So watch for this within culture, because culture is lapping this up. And here's some examples. Are any of these themes prevalent in the movie industry, your television programming, or your literature? No end of it. It is like you are being set up. There is no end. Avatar, no question, is one of the most important transhuman movies of all times. It even tells you the right transhuman religion that you should have, where you are integrated literally through your mind and through your cellular structure and through your spirit into Mother Earth, into Gaia. That is the right religion. You can be a Christian, sure, but as long as you also bow your knee to Earth and indulge in that as well, sure. You can be whatever you want to be. Just bow your knee to that as well. All kinds of examples could be given. Splice is a very interesting movie. It's a yucky movie. Don't watch it, especially with kids. It's kind of gross. It's kind of just icky. At the end of it, after scientists have created literally a hybrid through DNA splicing, they've created this very interesting human, not human creature that towards the end of the movie literally morphs itself into what can only be described as demonic. You're going, okay, well, this is kind of telling me where we're going with this. I'm sure you could come up with many other examples. The technology that we are playing with is a reflection of the spiritual condition of our souls. And this is what we find fascinating. This is what we want. Why? Because we bought into the lie. We're opening up Pandora's box. You know, I've been asked, well, do you think any of this is actually going to happen? That's a good question. Maybe. Maybe not. Maybe not. Regardless, whether or not we can succeed in creating this technological utopia or not, my concern is this. We've opened up Pandora's box. What type of hell on earth will we unleash in the process of proving that we can do this? What new diseases will we unleash? What new problems will unfold? What type of a mistake will we make? And now this is being asked actually within the transhuman community. Should we slow ourselves down? Should we halt the process? Because we don't know what the end result will be. And that's being debated. That is being debated. But overwhelmingly it is, we need to move forward. Why? Because we can. And it makes more sense to do than to hold back. Because to do is progress. And so we will move forward and we will open Pandora's box. And we will be God. Richard Seed. This is part of a documentary on technocracy. This is what he said. We are going to become gods. Period. If you don't like it, get off. You don't have to contribute. You don't have to participate. But if you're going to interfere with me becoming God, then we'll have big trouble. We'll have warfare. The only way to prevent me is to kill me. If you kill me, I'll kill you. Of course, that's a ridiculous statement, but do you get the point? Don't mess with us. Don't mess with us. Because this is the grand experiment. This is the end game goal, to become as God. Mark Peace, one of the co-inventors of 3D interfacing, mind-computer interfacing, says this in respect to transhumanism. once the genome was transcribed, once we knew what had made us human, we had, in that moment, passed into the transhuman. Knowing our codes, we can recreate them in our so-called synthetic rows of ones and zeros, artificial life. And now we have discovered the multiverse, where nothing is true and everything is permissible. And now we will reach into the improbable, resequence ourselves into a new being, debugging the natural state, because of course that wasn't quite right, was it? Debugging the natural state, translating ourselves into supernatural, incorruptible, eternal. There is no God but man. Wow. Does it give you shivers? It should. It should. This is just a reflection of our hearts, ladies and gentlemen. In October, I attended a transhuman conference entitled Transhumanism and Spirituality, hosted by the Mormon Transhumanist Association. I've had a lot of rubbing shoulders back and forth with some of the gentlemen in the Mormon Transhumanist Association. You know, they're really decent guys. I don't have issues with them personally. We've had some really interesting conversations back and forth. Really disagree? You bet. Really disagree. And yet they're just individuals as well. And so we have to also, I have to kind of keep in mind, what's going on here? What are we really having to concern ourselves with? The individuals or the philosophy behind? The power, the principality behind? Well, why would the Mormons have a transhumanist conference? Why would the Mormon Transhumanist Association even exist? It fits the framework of Mormon theology. This is Joseph Smith. And remember early on, we talked about degree by degree, step by step. Listen to what Joseph Smith said. God himself was once as we are now and is an exalted man. There's your transhuman, there's your posthuman. And sits enthroned in yonder heavens. Here then is eternal life, to know the only wise and true God. And you have got to learn how to be gods yourselves, and to be kings and priests to God, the same as all gods have done before you, namely by going from one small degree to another, to inherit the same power, the same glory, and the same exaltation until you arrive at the station of a God and ascend the throne of eternal power. You are evolving. You are moving forward, step by step, through your experiences, through your knowledge, through your technology, through your interaction with the hive. We were told very clearly that transhumanist spirituality is inclusive, not exclusive. There is one group that they are fairly hostile towards, and that is biblical fundamental Christians. And you couldn't escape that at this conference, and you can't escape it within their own writing, and you can't escape it when you talk to them, that they view any type of exclusive dogmatic truth claim as being anathema to a proper global civilization and a proper world society that is evolving and moving into something bigger and better and perfect. You're a stumbling stone. You're a bioconservative. You're trouble. And if you get in the way of them becoming gods, we'll have big trouble. Do you see the point? We're moving into what's called a singularity. This is the language now that is being used in the transhumanist community. It's also being used within the New Age community as well. It's the idea of integration and emergence. And it boils down to this. Information is increasing at a rate that it will literally run into itself and create a point in time where we can actually physically say, here is where information has literally caught up with itself. Machines and intelligence will merge at that point. We will be upgrading ourselves as humans. We will enhance ourselves. We at that point become spiritually one. We become evolved, perfected. We will have a new experience, a second coming of sorts. In fact, this is what is written about in one particular channeled message from an extraterrestrial dealing on the issue of DNA sequencing. This is what was channeled to a very interesting name, individual, Zoev Zhou. I don't know if I've pronounced that correct. But you'll get the point when we read the quote. The second coming is imminent, and you may as well get ready. This is particularly a good idea because you're it. You are the second coming. Become your own Messiah. Why wait? That is what the transmutational process your DNA sequencing, your evolution. That is what the transmutational process is all about. You will become your own Messiah. We're right back to the very beginning, aren't we? We're right back to the very first lie. Back to the Luciferian paradigm. Ascension, becoming as God, perfection. Take it. It's for you. It's yours. Your progression. You will move forward. You can ascend. You can take the throne. We will build the Tower of Babel, and you can take heaven by storm. Because this is what you were always meant to do. So says the occult metaphor, the Luciferic paradigm. No? Outside of Christ, that's the way the world is going. Before you came to Christ, that's what you were doing, whether you realize it or not. All of us were doing it in our sin state. Because it's a reflection of pride. It is a reflection of absolute, arrogant pride. This is where I stand, and here I will not fall. I will rise, and I will do what I want to do. I did it my way. So said Frank Sinatra, and so said we all. Well, what comes around goes around. Genesis 3:5. In the day you eat of it, your eyes will be opened. What a promise. The promise of progress. And you will be like God. Well, what does Yahweh say? Proverbs 14:12. There's a way that seems right to you. There's a way that seems right to man. This looked like a great idea, didn't it? This looked like what you needed to do was follow the Luciferic paradigm. But in the end, it leads to death. So much for immortality. This takes you down the road of death. It's also a reflection of our hearts. The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? Here is the heartbeat of deception. We deceive ourselves first, and then we deceive others. And outside of Christ lies the father of deception, the father of lies, Lucifer. How do we deal with it? It's a long passage, but you'll realize how we need to deal with it. You can't change the culture around you in the sense that you think you may be able to. You're not going to be able to change the entire biotechnology community, I guarantee you. Not a single person in this room is going to be able to change the computer industry. None of you are going to be able to change the Department of Defense and their quest for a super soldier. None of you in this room are going to be able to change the culture in the way that you would like it to be changed. One where we realize through common sense there are boundaries and there are rules. But how do we deal with it? We need to recognize that what we're actually dealing with is a spiritual principle. This is the bottom line, ladies and gentlemen. Here it is, Ephesians 6. Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. Therefore, take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand. That's what you need to be doing, ladies and gentlemen. You need to be standing in God's armor. That is your responsibility. Stand, therefore, having girded your waist with truth, having put on the breastplate of righteousness, and having shod your feet with the preparation of the gospel of grace. Above all, taking the shield of faith with which you will be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked one, and take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. It's not yours, it's his word. Praying always with all prayer and supplication in the Spirit, being watchful to this end with all perseverance and supplication for all the saints. This is your duty, ladies and gentlemen, as believers in Christ. Well, we're just going to quickly wrap up here. I realize that this is a heavy topic. If you want to know more about it, and you need to know more about it because your culture is going to tell you more about it, I'd suggest you need to take a look at some good resources on this particular area. Look at subscribing to our website. We have a very good deal. Every month we have an issue that comes out on some aspect of world change. And for $31, you'll be able to access everything, including all the back issues. Take the material there, download it, print it, put it on discs, give it to your pastors, give it to your friends, use it as a starting point to bring discussion into play. Also, we don't have too many of these left. This is a great resource. 3 hours of teachings on Mormonism. It's not from myself. They are documentary styles, presentations that take a look at what Mormonism teaches compared to what Scripture teaches. An excellent, excellent resource. Finally, there's only one Christian book on transhumanism that I know of at this point, written by Tom and Anita Horn, called Forbidden Gates. Definitely pick it up. At the very least, it'll give you a primer of what's going on. You'll have a better understanding of just simply how deep and how embedded this is. I hope you're bothered by what I've been sharing with you this afternoon. I hope it makes you feel a little bit ill at ease. It should. We are not living in a time for slumber or sleep. We're not living in a time of ease or comfort. We're living in a time when the enemy is very active. And it is time, ladies and gentlemen, that we move our own faith out of passivity and we become active as well in proclaiming God's truth.